Hello and welcome to Word on the Street. I'm your host, Brant, bringing you news in America and around the world and things that you may not hear on the mainstream media. Very excited to be here today. Thanks for tuning in. We're right here at GLC Studios, and I have with me none other than Julian Marley of China Aid. How are you doing, Julian?
Hey, Brant. Good to see you and good to be here.
It's always good to see you, man. I like calling you Agent Marley, but, joking aside, you really do have a crucial role with China Aid, with Bob Fu. And by the way, folks, you're going to see Bob Fu's book coming on the screen several times throughout Word on the Street here. You want to get, actually, I'll go ahead and pick it up here. It's God's Double Agent. This guy has lived it. He is living it. He was in the Tiananmen Square circles. He knows what it's like to be arrested, interrogated, and tortured by the Chinese Communist government. And he is here in America with China Aid, has rescued so many people from bad situations in China. Folks, just hang on. But Julian, again, so great to have you, man.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm impressed that a young man like you is involved in something so crucial when so many of your peers, it seems like their focus might be elsewhere or might be perhaps guided in a different way towards what they would call social justice, which has an undercurrent of what you and I fight against. But first off, what is your title there at China Aid?
So at China Aid, I focus on development. So really fundraising, partnerships, and really just whatever else Bob wants me to do. We're always working on something all the time.
Right. Now, how long have you been with China Aid?
It's coming up on about 2 years.
Wow.
In June. So really been a blessed time and learned so much more than I ever could imagine, but very thankful just to work under such a great man like Bob and just really learn so much from his story and just his faith.
Well, he is a great man, isn't he?
100%. I mean, one in a billion for sure. I mean, just you read his book and he, just came out of abject poverty. And, he stands between and really in front of presidents and parliaments across the world. And he just carries the Spirit of the Lord and just with a humility that is just really awe-inspiring, honestly.
Well, honor to call him a friend. And he's a very funny guy, by the way, in spite of all the things that he's been through, Some people will preach about count it all joy, no matter what their circumstances are. But this guy knows what it's like to count it all joy, even at the hands of torturous communist guards. And he lives the life, folks. When I first heard about Bob Fu, people would always speak about him in hushed tones, and I knew that he was a man of God. I knew that he was the real deal. Finally meeting him while shooting MMTV with Jamie Berryhill. Incredible, man. Another great show on GLC, by the way. I got to get a better look into Bob's life and who he is. And I tell you what, Julian, we're both honored to know him, aren't we?
100%.
He's on the front line of fighting against communists in terms of in the media. He's been attacked in American media as well. If you've heard the name, or maybe you think you've heard the name before, this is probably where you've heard it. Antifa and the like, all paid by the same people, were protesting in front of Bob Fu's house in Midland, Texas, when he was speaking in Washington, D.C. Very monumental day. A lot of faith leaders were speaking in D.C. about the darkness that we face right now that is attempting to infiltrate every part of society all around the world. Very coordinated effort you're going to hear more about in shows to come. But Bob has been with China. Now, when did he start China Aid? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, the early 2000s. Yeah. After, I think it was really, when 5 house church leaders were sentenced to death in China, and it really just kind of kickstarted his advocacy. I believe, thankfully, they were overturned. But, really, as Bob says in his book, just so many folks that, basically just needed help, and his heart, obviously, just led by the Lord, was just, I have to do something, for my fellow people and just for, fellow Christians that, thankfully he managed to come as a refugee, but a lot of folks, couldn't or can't.
Well, he's a hero all over the world for people that are escaping the very policies that are being propagated by our media and propagated by this current administration. Julian, someone like you, educated on the East Coast,
That's right.
in the hub of liberalism, what in the world got you to take a look at being involved in an organization like this? Answer that first question, if you would. What drew you to China Aid in the first place?
Honestly, it was kind of two things. The first was really just the divine encounter from the Lord. Just really opened up a connection with someone on the board there. But really, I just remember just a few months before starting, and I didn't even know about China Aid actually. I remember reading about Pastor Wang Yi, who is a house church leader who was sentenced to, I think, 7 years in prison.
Wow.
And I just remember, I think it was on one of those Christian news websites, just random article, just reading about, I think, one of his statements before he went to jail or something that he released, and it just totally just convicted me. And just the level of faith that I read in his words, and just the sincerity and honesty, and just really knowing the level of faith that he had, because it just emanated off the page, really just struck me. And it really just kind of opened my eyes to, this is a very real thing, but there's men and women in the world that, just operate at a level of faith that is just so convicting and so humbling to me. And it really just kind of lit a fire in me almost. And just really the Lord's mighty hand and his grace. Little did I know, a few months later, I'd be working at China Aid, and obviously Wang Yi and Early Rain Covenant Church is a church that we support a lot. So praise the Lord for that.
Well, I'm impressed with you, young man, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I believe you have quite a future, and you are a leader. And for those who may not know, tell us about your experience being educated on the East Coast.
Well, it's just so interesting because, I know there's a kind of a trope where a lot of folks worry, their kids go to college and, they lose the faith and whatnot. And I know everyone's different, but really for me, going to college where I did on the East Coast was the biggest blessing. I went into college and came out of college totally transformed with my faith.
Wow.
And I was just so thankful the Lord put some folks in my life that had a real conviction and a real heart, a real hunger for the Lord that was totally genuine. And they just stood by me. And just the churches I got involved with, faithful and legit as they come. And, every day I kind of just praise the Lord. I'm like, Lord, thank you. I never would have thought I would go to college and, you get an education and you're kind of focused on that. And really, I think I changed the most in college just with my faith.
Really?
So just a testament, just to, I think, a lot of intercessory prayer and really just the Lord just putting people in my life at the right times. And it just turned my world upside down, as they say.
So what you're encouraging parents with right now is that it's not necessarily a Marxist environment when they send their children to university?
I guess everyone has their opinions. Going to the liberal college, you experience a lot of, opinions and whatnot that, are a lot different than mine. But, 1 Thessalonians 5, it talks about, the prayers for us to be made complete in Messiah. And it's like, Lord, no matter what happens in this world, just teach me and equip me just to be whole and complete in you to where you can overcome the world. And, I think that just leads to a boldness and confidence where, the Lord's with you, then is what we're called to do is you go out in the world and just proclaim and be an example of just the completeness of the gospel. And, I don't really have to worry beyond that.
Well, brother, you give me hope for this generation.
Well, let me tell you something. There is a lot of folks out there with such a deep hunger. I've seen it, and I know it doesn't get talked about a lot, but man, some of the people I've met that work in just all these industries, the hunger and passion they have is insane. And it's just so genuine for the Lord. And there's a remnant, and that's what I tell people, when we talk about the world. I'm like, listen, there's a remnant out there There are people being equipped. They might not be in the media or the news, but the Lord's working on their hearts, and he's stirring them. And it's young and it's old, because there's, no divides in the kingdom of God. And, that's out there, and that's coming, and that's growing stronger. So I would just tell people, be encouraged. Be encouraged. I mean, Gideon's army was what, 300?
Right.
And the Lord pruned it down. But those 300, they were warriors. And, that's what we're seeing today. And I just think it comes down to, really recognizing that and just seeing, how is the Lord moving? Where is the Lord working?
Right.
And when you focus on that, I think perspectives can really change a lot, and you can really walk with a lot of hope and the Lord's perfect peace in your life, no matter what's going on in the news or the media.
Well, brother, I'm excited. You got some preach in you, man. Praise the Lord. And I'm glad that you do, Julian. I'm glad that you do. Every young person, there comes a time in your life where your faith has to become your own. Maybe you've seen your grandparents or your parents, more grandparents raising grandchildren in this day than ever before in our history. But there comes a time when your faith must become your own. We want to hear from you. You have a voice. You may not hear some of these stories that are happening in America and around the world on college campuses and on the street, but you're going to hear it here on Word of the Street. There's a lot of meanings to that title. It's not just headlines and happenings, but it's also about the ultimate, the word on the street. And we know that's Jesus. We know that's our Messiah. He's a reality to us. Is he a reality to you? Has your faith become your own? Do you have a story of faith? Have you had an experience that you would like to have your voice heard and talk about in regards to what's happening in the world and in your world, perhaps on your campus, maybe at your high school? We want to hear from you. This entire time you're seeing our information at the bottom of the screen, as well as ChinaAid.org. Now, I wasn't asked to do this, but I'm happy to do it. Get Bob Fu's book, God's Double Agent. You can get it at ChinaAid.org. You can also get it on Amazon.com, but I encourage you to get it on ChinaAid.org. Connect with this incredible ministry. Get on the front lines with us. And speaking of the front lines, man, again, you are on the front lines. You're going around the country and as Bob speaks in churches and various events and things like that too. Are you finding that people are shocked to discover that the Chinese government currently has concentration camps around China and other places? Are they shocked to hear that? Do they think it was a conspiracy up until now? What's the reaction that you're getting on the ground when you visit other churches in other states?
Well, I think for a lot of folks it definitely is a surprise. Certainly this is not talked a lot about in the news, and certainly the Communist Party is quite good at their propaganda, so a lot of information that's maybe out there is not true. I think one thing that is important to kind of see is that, when folks hear about this, they're convicted and they're stirred. And it doesn't matter the religion, because a lot of the Uyghurs are Muslim and some are Christian too, but their hearts are convicted to say, we need to do something about this. What can I do to support these folks? How can I spread the word? How can I inform others? What should I say so people understand this? And as we see in the news, kind of people are becoming aware. I mean, the Uyghur concentration camps making more headlines. You have talks about boycotting the Olympics and whatnot. So, I think slowly more people are understanding and learning the truth.
The Bob Fu report, Bob talks about these updates of the churches that China Aid is helping, even people that he is helping escape these regions and have been in concentration camps. It's happening right now as we speak, folks. It's a reality. This is happening. It's not a conspiracy theory. And Bob has often talked about on the Bob Fu report, which you can see on ChinaAid.org. You can see it on GLC. You can also see it, I believe, from the website and be directed there as well. But this is a reality, and it is happening, folks. And the same tactics that Bob Fu saw being used with the media, with racial division, with propaganda, even down to out of the blue, everyone, I'll never forget, or noticing for the first time in probably the 90s, everyone wearing a mask around China. Go figure. A lot of the same things and tactics that were used in China are being used in America. And so you need to be aware of that. You know, Javier Hoven is a mayor here in Odessa, Texas, and he said that an informed society is a dangerous society. Get informed. These things, they are realities, but Jesus is a reality too. And people are experiencing him in different parts of the world in an increasing manner. And you'll be hearing about that in upcoming shows. So, Julian, what is the best way to get involved with China Aid to become a freedom fighter, as Bob and you call them? How can I be a freedom fighter with China Aid and be informed about these tactics, as well as to pray for the persecuted church in China?
Absolutely. Well, first, folks can head to our website, ChinaAid.org. We do a lot of reporting on persecution and examples of the Communist Party's brutality against folks of faith. A lot of those stories, pretty much all of them, are not really talked about in the mainstream.
Of course.
We have a lot of brave reporters that really go through a lot sometimes to get the information that we publish. So if you want to get informed, that's the place to go. Folks that would like to support more, we have a letter writing campaign to prisoners. You can head to our website as well, and there's several prisoners and their addresses. Some of them, like Sister Zhang Zhan, made international headlines. Maybe you know her or have heard of her. She was the one that went to Wuhan at the start of the COVID pandemic and did a lot of reporting about what was going on. And the government sent her to prison for 4 years. But you can head to our website and you can write a letter to her and other prisoners to encourage them. And one powerful thing about those letters is that there's been times where these guards see the letters and they, might actually treat the prisoners better because they know that there's folks across the world that know their story, know their plight, and are not forgetting them.
Wow. And
of course, there's, plenty of stories on the website and plenty of people to pray for as well. And as always, we would, graciously appreciate any financial support as well. Right. Everything goes, certainly to support our persecuted brothers and sisters in China. And there's several options on our website, several different campaigns for people to donate their money to. But, most of all, above all that, prayer. Prayer changes things. Prayer changes the world. And, a unified church is the devil's greatest enemy. And I think people forget that the church in heaven and the church on earth is one, and they work together and they work in conjunction. And so, really, we've seen so many supernatural miracles at China Aid and just so many incredible testimonies through the power of prayer. So, prayer is worth its weight in gold for those of you or those out there who want to support the persecuted church in any country.
Well, brother, again, I'm impressed with you. And wow. I've never heard that before. The church in heaven and the church on earth are unified. Have you ever heard that? I've never heard that before. Wow, how inspiring. Yeah, and prayer is real. In this world of gadgets and distractions, we forget. We easily lose grasp of reality. We think if it's on the internet, it's true, or if it's on mainstream media, it's true. But the reality is that the Bible is true. Jesus is real. He is an entity, the Son of God. He is a reality. Is he a reality to you? I pray that he is. These atrocities that are being committed by the Chinese government and these attempted inroads of making America a socialist and communist nation, that's a reality too. Are you going to let it happen? Are you going to give your freedom away? I'm not. How about you? So it's time to be informed. It's time to pray. It's time to come together. It's time to stand. And we appreciate you, Julian, coming on today. First of many times. And your service with China Aid, the inspiration you are to your generation. I look forward to seeing what you're going to do as well. You're already doing great things with Bob Fu and China Aid. We need more leaders like you, Julian. So thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
All right, I can't wait. Now, there is a well-known doctor, not only in West Texas, he's been in national headlines, and he has some new news for you. He was first on the scene, the national scene, of providing a silver bullet. He literally had a shot heard around the world, originally known as the silver bullet shot for COVID. Well, he's back with more news. He's still in the headlines. He's actually seeing more patients because of the vaccine than the COVID. Stay tuned. We'll see you right after this.
What is the word on the street? Real people, real stories. What the world is saying versus what he says. Watch the word on the street on GLC.
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Richard Bartlett, who made national and international headline news when COVID first broke out. He had something known then as a silver bullet shot for COVID. Literally, as he joked earlier, the shot heard around the world, and it was. But you know what? He's still on the front line and currently seeing more people during this time with vaccination complications than the COVID itself. Welcome back. How you doing,
Good to be here. Thank you very much.
It's good to see you today.
You know, as you said, I'm still working full-time as an emergency room physician. And so for the last 2 months here in Texas,
Right.
I'm seeing twice as many people in the emergency room with complications from the COVID shots. And they're coming to the emergency room with true emergencies. Shortness of breath, transient neurologic episodes where their legs won't work and they fall flat on their face. 18-year-old healthy college students with no pre-existing conditions. After the shot, immediately having lightheadedness, shortness of breath, trouble with memory, fatigue. These are worrying symptoms, and they're new for these patients, and they're following on the heels of getting the COVID shots. And at the same time, in the last 50-hour shift in the emergency room, 0 new COVID patients coming in, which
Interesting.
When I looked at the official sites, Johns Hopkins map and their stats on the internet, wow, just 1 patient with COVID death in Texas, 33 million people, and only 1 died on, I believe that was the 16th when I looked at it. But bottom line, deaths have plummeted. They're nearly 0. New cases have plummeted. Even testing has plummeted since mid-January. Mid-January is when herd immunity started having its effect.
Wow.
At that time, that's about the time we had only about 7% of Texans vaccinated with this COVID shot. And so that doesn't explain this. What explains it is early effective outpatient treatment that's inexpensive, readily available at every pharmacy with inhaled budesonide. Other doctors are prescribing ivermectin. Dr. Pierre Corey, a critical care doctor, spoke to the U.S. Senate about ivermectin and its benefits. Amazingly, remember we were told India's in a disaster and we should brace ourselves for imminent disaster because of what's happening there?
Right.
Well, April this year, April 2021, their government health leaders set out a new strategy of early outpatient treatment with what? Inhaled budesonide, an inhaled steroid that's readily available that we talked about over a year ago.
Sounds familiar.
Texas, and ivermectin. And so guess what's happening in the last several weeks? The numbers in India are diving. We're seeing less new deaths, less new cases, less testing in India. Wow, what are we supposed to be afraid of again?
Right.
You know, we were told, be afraid, be very afraid. Another wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave. We got new variants that are coming out. The bottom line is, hey, reality is, science is, proven by Oxford University in randomized controlled trials, which is the top shelf evidence, we have effective treatment strategies. Inhaled budesonide could prevent 90% of hospitalizations, ER visits, and even urgent care visits if it's used on a COVID patient, according to Oxford. Oxford knows what they're talking about. They have 72 Nobel Prize laureates. Why isn't that being promoted in the mainstream media? But I'll tell you what, doctors around the world are saving lives, and this case closed. We have an answer. We don't need experimental vaccines. We don't need experimental medicines even. We have tried and true, inexpensive, safe medicines that won't make anyone rich, but will save lives.
And you hit on it right there, Dr. Bartlett. It won't make anyone rich, but it will save lives. You know, all too often we see a scenario where people are definitely secondary to money. I couldn't believe it when we first heard about hospitals being paid enormous amounts for claiming COVID deaths. Doctors, one in particular in Arkansas, was enraged to discover that his source and what he was directly being told, $39,000 per COVID death. Why was it so important to get a high body count? It's not conspiracy theory, folks. It's a fact. Now you're seeing it with your own eyes. Very curable. You were right all along with your solution.
Just like the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament said, I don't know the answer, but I'll ask the one that knows the answer.
Right.
I was praying in March of 2020 at the beginning of this pandemic while I was working a 48-hour emergency room shift between patients. Lord, what do I do if someone comes in here and they're dying of COVID and they say, I can't breathe?
Right.
And I had a moment to take a cat nap in the call room. As I was waking up, I'm convinced God answered my prayer. But little old me, by myself in a call room in an emergency room in West Texas, got a strategy that worked. Not just kind of worked, but 90% of hospitalizations could be prevented. Remember, the hospitals were overwhelmed.
Oh, of course.
Remember, we had to have hospital ships, and we were turning the gift shops into COVID wards in hospitals. It was crazy. Actually, in West Texas, at one of the main hospitals here, I called the mammogram center, and they had shut down new mammograms for a month. Hello? We put cancer screening on hold, cancer treatment on hold. Other people with other valid health problems were being denied care and refused care, life-saving care for real problems. Our healthcare system got hijacked January 1, 2020, when a few people showed up and gave us a failed strategy. I'll call it failed because according to their numbers, over 500,000 deaths. But let's think about 90% of 500,000 deaths. That'd be 450,000 deaths. Could that have been prevented with early outpatient effective therapy? Oxford University says 90% of hospitalizations, ER visits, and urgent care visits could be prevented with just one of the medicines that is out there to help. Can you imagine moms, dads, grandparents, kids dead that might have lived if they were treated with early outpatient treatment? Is that a possibility? That's a question your listeners and viewers need to ask.
Well, a question I'd like to ask is, why have you been under such attack? If you've been right all along, you've been helping people overcome COVID with inexpensive solutions.
Brilliant question. And
we know the answer why.
So emergency use authorization is how they got these vaccines out and remdesivir out as the treatment strategies that were being promoted by the CDC, the World Health Organization, and Fauci. Oh, have they been wrong on anything so far? Let's think about this for a second. And you can't get emergency use authorization, my understanding is, if there's an effective, readily available treatment. And so you cannot have an effective treatment that's known to the public if you want emergency use authorization. That's my understanding. So all of this would look totally different if they weren't able to get emergency use authorization, because we were able to prevent 90% of hospitalizations, ER visits, and urgent care visits.
There is hope, and you don't have to walk in fear. And I'm grateful for people in the front line, people like Dr. Richard Bartlett. We're going to hear more about that on an upcoming show, but thank you for being with us, Doctor.
It's a pleasure to be here.